Every winter, like clockwork, he showed up. No one asked. No one paid him. He just grabbed a shovel and quietly cleared his neighbor's driveway. Years later, the neighbor's final gift revealed something unbelievable. Headphones. Subscribe to Minutes of Moral for real inspired stories that warm the heart and restore your faith in humanity. Like, comment, and share to keep kindness alive. In a snowy suburb of Minnesota, 17-year-old Kyle watched out his frosted bedroom window. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but he could already see the snow piling up like a thick white blanket. It had snowed through the night, a full 10 inches, maybe more. Across the street, his elderly neighbor, Mr. Jensen, had cracked open his front door and stepped outside, wrapped in a faded brown coat and a wool cap that had probably seen 3 decades. In one hand was an old metal snow shovel, and in the other, a cane. Kyle's breath caught. The man was nearly 80. The snow was knee-deep. And yet, here he was, trying to clear a path alone. Kyle didn't hesitate. He threw on his coat, pulled his boots over his pajama pants, grabbed his dad's old shovel from the garage, and jogged across the street. "Let me help with that, sir," he said. Mr. Jensen looked up slowly, a little startled. Then a smile. Small, tired, grateful. He didn't say much. Just nodded once, and stepped back. That was how it started. From that day on, something changed. Not with words, but with action. Every winter morning, before school or work, Kyle would rise early. He'd layer up, fill a thermos with coffee or cocoa, and grab the shovel. Snowfall didn't matter. Temperature didn't matter. Whether it was a few inches or a full-blown blizzard, Kyle showed up. Mr. Jensen never asked. Kyle never waited to be thanked. It was just understood. A quiet agreement between generations. Kyle would shovel, and Mr. Jensen, if he was feeling strong, would sometimes bring out 2 steaming mugs and set them on the porch rail. They'd stand there, sipping silently, watching the neighborhood wake up beneath a sky of silver and pink. Sometimes they talked about the weather. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. But something unspoken passed between them, a trust, a bond, a gentle rhythm built on kindness. Kyle grew older. Graduated high school. Started working part-time at a nearby auto shop. There were hard days. Days when Kyle's parents fought. Days when he failed a test or felt lost about his future. There were long nights when he cried quietly in his room, wondering if anything he did mattered. But still, when the snow came, he showed up. He didn't always want to. But somehow, pushing that shovel across Mr. Jensen's driveway gave him a strange kind of peace. It was something steady in a world that often felt too loud, too cruel, and too fast. Sometimes Mr. Jensen would wave from the window, bundled in a blanket, eyes soft behind fogged-up glass. Other times, Kyle would find a small tin of cookies left on the porch. Or a note, scribbled in shaking handwriting. "Thank you, Kyle. You have a good heart. Jay." But most days, there were no signs at all. Just snow. Just silence. Just the scrape of shovel on concrete. Years passed. Kyle started college classes at night while working full-time. He moved into a small apartment, not far from the old neighborhood. Yet every winter, he still returned. It wasn't about guilt. It wasn't even about gratitude. It was about showing up. Because kindness, real kindness, doesn't retire. It doesn't need a reason. Then came the spring when everything changed. The snow had finally melted. Trees were budding. The air smelled like rain. Kyle noticed something strange. No footprints on Mr. Jensen's front steps. No rustling curtains in the window. No cocoa on the porch rail. He knocked. No answer. 2 days later, a for sale sign appeared in the yard. Then, one morning, a man in a gray suit rang Kyle's doorbell. He introduced himself as a lawyer. He handed Kyle an envelope and said, "Mr. Jensen asked that this be delivered to you, personally." Kyle's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside, a short handwritten note. To Kyle, the young man who never needed to be asked. In this world, so many wait for someone to call on them. You didn't. You saw a need, and stepped in. You reminded me of the world I believed in. You showed up. Year after year. That mattered more than you'll ever know. Kyle wiped his eyes. But the surprises weren't over. There was more. Enclosed was a set of keys. Old, tarnished, familiar. They belonged to Mr. Jensen's pickup truck, the blue one that had sat untouched in the garage for years. Kyle had admired it since he was a teen. But even more shocking was the final page. A savings bond. Enough to cover tuition for the next 2 years of college. Kyle stared at the document, stunned. He had worked part-time for 5 years, piecing together funds, borrowing textbooks, skipping meals to save. And now, this man, this quiet neighbor who barely spoke above a whisper, had given him a future. Light bulb life lesson? Real kindness isn't loud. It doesn't beg for cameras or credit. It doesn't keep score. It shows up again and again, especially when no one's watching. Kyle didn't clear that driveway for a reward. He did it because someone needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. And in the end, that quiet, consistent kindness changed 2 lives. Forever. Have you ever done something for someone not for praise, not for pay, but simply because it mattered? Share your story in the comments. Thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe to Minutes of Moral, where real people remind us of what really matters.